Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts, AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. As you hopefully already know, we are a Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses the things that schools may not have prepared you for. I'm AJ, and sitting across me as always, Jason. Jason, how you doing?
Doing great, AJ. Excited to be here.
So I got a question for you. Are you a pineapple on pizza kind of guy, or are you no pineapple on a pizza?
Oh, man, I love pineapple. It's not my go-to.
We are in two different places.
Oh, come on. Ham and pineapple on a pizza is a delicious combo. It's not my go-to, right? It's not where I'm going to start, but I do like it.
Well, I will say the argument of pineapple yes or no on a pizza is very polarizing. And so people are either like, yeah, it's wonderful, or no, it's the nastiest thing ever and it should never be on pizza. And I guess I'm almost kind of like you. It's not bad. It's just not for me. Like, I'll eat it if it is the only pizza there. But if I can have any choice of pizza, it would not be one of the, even in the middle.
Understood. Well, quick question though. What about the Southwest pizza? Do you like the barbecue sauce on?
Yes. Yeah. Barbecue sauce. And matter of fact, for lunch, I had a chicken bacon ranch pizza.
There you go.
And,
love those.
Are you a cold pizza person?
Oh, I think it's better than hot pizza.
Amen. Okay, so we're good there. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that comes from college too. Well, in this episode, we are going to be discussing the senior year. We're actually starting a new episode, which is the Advanced College series. So we're going to be talking about the senior year, or in some cases, senior years. Last episode, we talked about time management tips. So if you want some tips and tricks about time management, take one step back and listen to last week's episode. It was pretty good. So does the senior year sound something like you can get behind, Jason?
Oh yeah, that's a big one for me. I made some significant mistakes there, so I got some good information to throw out there for folks.
Oh, I hear you.
But before we jump in, remind everybody, visit Reschool'd.com. That's Reschool with a D, not an ED. Check out our social media handles. We're Reschool'd Pod. And of course, on all your favorite podcast apps, Apple, Google, Spotify. Check us out, follow us, get notifications when we drop new episodes. And on the website, make certain that you're reaching out to us. Tell us the things you want to hear about. We're here to talk about them. We want to get the information to you. Okay, everything we do here is about you. So let us know what you want to hear.
Also, we have a really big announcement today that we hinted a few weeks ago about coming to the tubes. We are actually starting a YouTube page. And on the YouTube page, it's going to be some very similar stuff that what we're doing here, but it's going to be more segmented. So instead of having one 30-minute video on pretty much exactly what we're talking about on these podcast episodes, we're going to take individual questions from these podcasts and just talk about those. So they're only going to be about 3 to 5 minutes long. But we just want to make sure if you need answers to a specific question, that's a great place to go if you don't have 30 minutes to listen to the whole episode. But we really want you to listen to the whole episode on our podcast apps. So,
yeah, and we're going to drop some really specific tips there, more instructional based stuff. Don't forget to do this type scenario. So maybe more time conscious folks are looking for that rather than the full explanation or the full discussion. So check us out in both places. I think you'll like it.
Yeah. And two, if you have those questions, if we feel like the questions that you submit are very specific and actually be more conducive to the YouTube channel, then we may post it over there too. So quick question of the day, since we're talking about our senior year. What was your senior year like?
Well, it was busy.
No kidding.
That was when I started making that transition from focusing so hard on school. I got really ahead. I finished my major early, so I just had some basic education requirements to take, which basically just meant I was working a lot. I got a little more of a social life that year, but I will say one thing, I was starting to prepare. I knew I was going to grad school, so there was that mix in there. So the mix changed a lot. I was still busy, but the mix between school, work, preparing for after career stuff changed up a little bit. How about you?
Yeah, mine was, things got more serious because, as we've said before, I was trying to have fun. And my senior year, I didn't play soccer. So that gave me a little bit of time. However, I did meet my now wife my senior year. So focus was supposed to be on school, but it ended up being on the girl, which ended up very well. Again, I'm happily married with three kids now. So
better that it happened then than earlier, because that in my experience, at least from what I saw with others, tends to be a big draw away from your commitment to classes, right?
Yeah.
The personal aspects.
You tend to, and I had a girlfriend when I came into college, and obviously we broke up and everything, and we're still friends, but I look back and I made some decisions back then that I probably shouldn't have made because of the girl in my situation, and I should have just been looking out more for me. And if it worked out, it worked out. If it didn't, it didn't. But I'm thankful the way it happened now. But I will say it was tougher for me my senior year, because the class load was tougher because I was trying to get everything done, and then ultimately, like you said, go to grad school, and that was tough trying to get all that stuff ready, take my GMAT, figure out where I'm going to go apply, all the essays and stuff like that. So
Well, I never had that problem. I was far too self-absorbed with what I wanted career-wise and what I wanted out of life. I never developed a serious relationship that could pull me away from work and study during school. So I think I might be the exception on that. But ultimately, it worked out okay. But
yeah, I would say so.
maybe it might not have been the recommended course of action for everybody, right? To keep your sanity.
Well, yeah, and the only reason I bring that up is because I do know the senior year, and we're going to talk about this later on too. I do know the senior year is a lot of times where you do get that seriousness with your significant other, because you're now looking into the future. You're going to be leaving college, where college you're always together, or at least most of the time you're together. If you're leaving the city, then it's going to change completely everything. So you really start to look at that future outlook for your relationship.
Yeah, difficult decisions on the social front the same way as on the career front. I
Yep.
think we focus, and here we're going to talk, I think, primarily about the career front aspect of, hey, you're ending your college experience. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made. Well, those social aspects, are we going to stay together as a couple? Are we going to, are we going to do a distance relationship? Is this thing going to last? That type of thing. It affects decisions just as much as, am I going to go on to graduate school? Am I going to do this? Because it does. It changes the course of your life. And I think a lot of the questions we answer here, the reason they're so important is because they do change the course of your life.
Yeah, I know we have one episode sometime in the future. I have to go look back in the docs, but about dating in college. And I think from when we talked about it, or when we put it up on the docs, it was more of the traditional dating. I actually think that there is another topic in there about long distance dating, and my brother is somebody that I will probably try to get on the show on that one as a guest speaker, because I don't know if you have much experience with long distance relationships. He and his girlfriend, and now his fiance, who's about to get married and will probably be married by the time this episode airs, they dated long distance for like 4 years. And it was, when I say long distance, they were 11 hours away. And
Wow.
yeah, and they made it work. It's a cool thing to think about. And I'm glad I didn't have to, because I would have lost it.
Yeah, there's a saying in Spanish that says, con el amor de lejos, los cuatro están feliz,
I got
which just,
Quattro.
yeah, it just means when you have a long distance relationship, it means all four of you are happy.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. Well, let's get into the main topic. And so the main topic again is the senior year. Let's define the senior. What actually is the senior? What does it mean, senior year or years?
Well, in college, there's a finite number of hours to get a degree. And most students who are going to follow a kind of linear track try to break that up over 4 years. Sometimes it stretches to 5 or cuts down to 3 if you're really motivated and getting after it. But
That was you, wasn't it?
well, no, I took the full 4. I had a few extra credits in there, but I did stretch it out the
Okay.
full distance. But the important thing is keeping track of your credit hours and make sure you're satisfying all the different areas that you have to satisfy. Your social sciences, your mathematics, your English, all of those things for general education, in addition to your major. So most of the time by your senior year, you only have a few of those general education classes left, if any, and then it's mostly major classes that you're getting to. So most people define the senior years just when you're down to, I only have a semester or 2 worth of classes to take. Now, if you're a part-time student and you're stretching this out over however many number of years, again, it's down to, within 2 semesters, I'm going to graduate, or within 2.5 semesters, take a summer semester or something in there together. I'm going to graduate, and that's the senior year.
So I think that the college technical definition of senior year is over 90 hours completed. So if you've completed 90 hours, then technically you are a senior. That doesn't mean that those hours have to go in your degree. It doesn't mean that it has to be one of the ones that you're going to graduate with. It's just the fact that you completed it. So, like for me, I've said this before, I took 2 years, almost 2 years of chemistry before I went to the business school. Some of those hours carried over to my degree in the business department. Some of them didn't, and they were just kind of sitting on my transcript at the very end. It says not used. That doesn't mean that I couldn't use those hours for the purpose of my classification. So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, I had 30 hours that could not transfer over to the business department. If I'm still at 60 hours within the business department, but I have those 30 that I have not used, I'm still technically a senior. So that's why you hear a lot of times people saying they may be a fifth year senior, because even though they are technically a senior, they're still having to compensate for those hours that they completed but are not being used in their degree. Does that make sense?
It does. And one thing I noticed with my students a lot, they may not, because of work and life, they may not be taking 15 credit hours per semester. So that 90-hour rule, saying that only 2 semesters remain of taking 15 hours each, that doesn't apply to them. They're taking 9, 12 hours each semester. It's going to be 3 or 4 more semesters. So many of them are stretching college. And I think I forget the percentage. We looked it up one time.
Yeah, it was only 40. I think it was 40% that graduated within 4 years.
Okay, so 40%, 60% is not. So, they're stretching it out to that 5th, 6th, whatever year. And so I think students now are seeing more of a take courses year round, including the summer, A and B semesters, sometimes winter semester type thing that they do. Some colleges on the quarter semester, so they take less hours, but they're bunched together into 4 groups a year or 3 groups at some schools. So anyway, that being said, I like to focus on those. When you get down to, I have 2 semesters of taking courses left, because for me, that's where a lot of the big decisions come in about career-wise, about grad school. Am I leaving this city to go somewhere else? That type of thing.
So is it safe to say for the rest of the episode, we're really looking at not the technical sense of senior year, which is the 90 plus hours, but really the last year of your undergrad career?
That's where my mind is going to be when we talk about this.
Okay, cool. So now that we've got that defined, it seems like a lot of focus is put on senior year. Like everybody thinks about the senior year. Do you feel like the senior year is more important than the other years?
In many ways, yes.
Okay.
Now, getting off to a good start, establishing your GPA, learning to study, doing all those things that we talk about in other episodes, incredibly important. More important, I would say, than anything else for your performance in college. But when it comes to the next steps, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Senior year becomes ridiculously important.
Yeah, I completely agree. The senior year, it is the time, no matter what you did really in the first, freshman, sophomore, and junior year, it is the time to really make that final push. If you slacked off in the first 3 years, then it's time to try to build that back up. If you did really well in the first 3 years, it is time to continue that pattern. You don't want to slack off if you've worked hard in those first 3 years. It is a very important year, especially knowing what the next step in your career is. Now, if you're going to go right to the career force, it's going to be different, and their workforce, it's going to be different than if you're going to go into grad school. That focus is going to be completely different. So what are your thoughts on senioritis? Do you feel like that's an actual thing?
It is a real thing, and it hits hard.
Oh, it hits hard.
Oh, yeah. Even the serious students, even the ones who are adamant about going on to grad school or kept that GPA strong the entire time, man, they want to finish out strong, they still get senioritis. And I most closely associate it with burnout.
Yeah.
That is, you just can't do it anymore, whether the distractions got too great or whether you're just tired, right? You've put in so much effort, you need a rest, and it's been a dense, diligent 4 years of study and effort combined with work or social life or whatever. But the combination of the two has beat you up so bad that now you're just not doing the work. So lots of people take cruise classes, easy classes to try to make their way out and just satisfy the basics to get out. Other people push those classes back to the end, the really difficult ones.
That's me.
And those are the classes you do not want to try and cruise in
No
because,
kidding.
you don't want that GPA dropping below graduation standards or getting to the point that it closes off options to you like graduate school and things like that right there at the end.
Yeah, senioritis, for those who've never heard that term, and it's exactly what he was just explaining, it is really if I had to create a definition, and I'm not looking this up, but if I had to create a definition, it is just the loss of motivation in that final year, because like you said, it's just being burnt out. You've done all this stuff, and now you see that light at the end of the tunnel, and it's really hard to get motivated to finish with the same intensity that you may have had in the first 3 years. And why the motivation starts to creep down can be a ton of different factors. It could be, like you said, burnout. It could also be this feeling of you're leaving college, you're leaving your friends, you're feeling sad, and you don't want that to happen. So you're going to try to almost self-implode, so to kind of push that back. So you're not leaving your friends. You don't want to lose that time, because this is, after college, you're the adulting begins, and adulting is not fun.
I'll throw in there one thing I saw as well. And of course, I worked in restaurants the entire time. A lot of people, they're in their senior year, their junior year, late junior year, and a lot of their friends are graduating. They've already graduated, that type of thing. And it seems like they have more freedom, right? They are not in school anymore, and they're just going to work and things like that. And I think it's particularly true when you're working alongside these individuals. All of a sudden, you're jealous, right? You've still got to balance this school where they seem to have more balance in their life. They're just working, they're just doing this, and you're trying to manage both. And it's very difficult. Makes you want to put the school on the back burner and say, gosh, can this ever end? Will it ever be done? Right? And so that's another motivating factor, right? You're demotivated by the fact that you're still trudging through something that people you're close to or most associated with have already graduated.
Yeah. Would you, just side question, would you go back to your senior year if you could?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, me too.
Because I did things differently. I pushed so hard up front. I took summer classes every summer, and I was ahead of the game. And my senior year, I was basically taking general education classes. I took things that I just wanted to take rather than things that I needed to take.
Man, I wish I had you closer to me when I was going to college.
Well, during that time, I should have said, all right, now I'm going to have a lot more fun and do a lot more things. It turned into I just worked a lot more, right? My everyday was that I wasn't at school or doing something was pretty much filled by going to work. And I would have changed that a little bit. I would have gone back and had a little more fun.
Yeah. Well, what are some things students can expect in their senior year? Maybe they're not anticipating it. Maybe they're not thinking about it. Maybe they're in their junior year and they haven't really thought about their senior year and what they're going to get into or what's going to come at them, what they need to do. So what are some things that, we can lay out there for up and coming seniors, or maybe beginning of your senior year, or maybe you're into the senior year and you just haven't thought about them. What are some things we can lay out for them to kind of help them get through it?
3 things. Okay. 1, relationships. If you got personal relationships, people start to break apart, people come together. All those groups or loose relationships like fraternities and things like that, you start to be less associated with them, right? You start to become more adulting, as they say. That's one thing. So the relationship aspect is going to change. For you, it will be different than the person beside you, but it's going to change, no doubt.
Sure.
2, the work aspect. 1, if you work while in school, it's more likely that you do it at the end than at the beginning. So most people introduce that element there, or the degree to which they introduce that element. Like me, I started working a lot more at the end, I'll say. So it ended up taking a lot more of my time. So work will become an aspect. And then there's the career transition, making the decision about what you're going to do. And that's a huge part. Finding, internships, jobs, that career paths, learning about networking becomes a big thing. All of those things, if you're going to go to graduate school, perhaps as the next career step, taking those preparatory tests, all of those things, all of this happens primarily in your senior year.
Yeah. Mine kind of goes back into that career preparedness. You know, a lot of students are going to go right out of undergrad, right into their career. But there's going to be a good number of students that are going to go into grad school. And your senior year is that time to prepare to submit your grad school application package. And with that, you have to go through essays. You have to write essays, potentially have to go through interviews too. You also have to probably take some kind of exam for getting into grad school. So, for if you're going into the business school, graduate school, you're going to have to take the GMAT. Some of them take the GRE, but most of them take the GMAT. There's a ton of stuff that you're going to have to go through. You're still going to have to get letters of recommendations. So that is really the senior year. So everything that you're doing within your class, or within your classes, I should say, all those responsibilities, you also have to add to this the stuff that you have to get ready for your grad school if you're going to apply. How many grad schools you're going to apply to? How much is that going to cost? Because the applications are going to cost something too. So I would say, that's something that you need to have on your radar when you're going into your senior year, understanding what you're going to do, because you don't want to wait to the last minute to get that stuff done.
And one other thing, career-wise, and this applies a lot more to business students than it perhaps applies to maybe education or nursing or something like that, but it does still apply across the board. Making connections, industry connections. If you're not going to go to grad school and you're going to start on a career path, trying to get that first job, statistically in the United States, approximately 70 some odd % of jobs are never publicly posted. I know that's a crazy statistic. 3 out of 4 jobs that are created in the United States will never see the light of day outside of internal referral, meaning that an employee already in that business is going to let you know that the company could use somebody who does, you name it. They interview a couple of people that get referred in, and one of those people get hired. The HR process is a mess, right? Nobody wants to go out there and put advertisements and get 1,000 applications and do whatever. So normally that referral process is still number one in the U.S. far and away. I mean, 3 times the number of hires that come from other sources. So that being said, if you really want to get on to or into the career track that you desire or into the company that you want, that senior year is where you start doing that professional networking, joining organizations and clubs, doing internships, trying to do whatever it takes through your social life to meet people who are going to refer you or give you that opportunity to take that step.
Which, that is a great point. I wanted to actually bring this question up because I think this is on some students' mind. Is your senior year too late to start getting into extracurriculars like those organizations you were talking about?
It's never too late. You should be doing it as early as possible, particularly internships. Most Fortune 500 companies, for example, hire new hires, recent graduates from their internship program. And if you don't believe me, go search for jobs for new hires and look in Fortune 500 companies, right? You're not going to see them. Yet they hire tens of thousands of new graduates every year. So how are they hiring these? Well, it's through their established internship programs. Most of these companies, if you do an internship with them, unless something goes wrong and, or you just don't perform very well, you're probably going to get a job offer. So you hear about these students that have a job offer their entire senior year and are just sitting on that to the end. It's because they did an internship with a company during the end of their sophomore or junior years going into their junior or senior years. And so the job offer was made and they sit with it the entire time, which is amazing for the student. It can be one of those factors that demotivates you again. But the earlier you start, the better. Now, smaller, mid-sized companies, they don't hire that early. But do you need to go ahead and start making your connections, laying the groundwork, and still potentially working part-time or doing internships with these companies? Well, sure you do. I mean, I would say for students who aren't born into connections, who don't have that level of built-in infrastructure and support from friends, family, whoever, however they got it, the students who understand that part of the game and start taking those steps early have a huge advantage on everyone else. So the senior year is a little bit late, but it's never too late.
I agree. I mean, I got into a couple organizations my senior year, and if it's nothing more than just to be able to put it on your resume, You're not going to get any leadership position from it. You're not going to get, you're going to be able to do, maybe depending on what organization it is part of, you may do some volunteer work. You may do some, organizational things. You may be able to network with some people, which is always good. And again, you're able to put that on your resume as an extracurricular activity. So there are still good things from it. But like you said, there is a bigger advantage from those starting early. So if you can do that.
And we have a completely separate episode where we address, internships,
Next episode.
networking, things like that, right? That are going to make all the difference in the world. So definitely tune into those because we're going to offer some really, really practical advice for you. Some of that takes place in the senior year, and that's why it's relevant here.
So you took away my tease. That's actually the next episode is the internships.
Well, yeah, just building the excitement, right?
Oh, okay, gotcha. Last question. What are some mistakes that you've seen students make leading up to their senior year?
Well, one of them is one that I made. So I did not manage my credit hours well. Had a lot of credit hours in areas that were already satisfied. And so my final semester, I needed to take a couple of classes that would satisfy my requirements to graduate. I already had my major. These were general education requirements. And it turns out I took 2 classes that were incompatible. You could not take both of them and receive academic credit in 2 areas. I found this out midway through the semester.
That's got to be disheartening as all get out.
It was awful. I went to an advisor and said, help, what do I do? And, honestly, if I'd have been more diligent or had worked with them earlier, they would have caught that, but they didn't. I took it upon myself, so I almost got myself in trouble. And I was already enrolled in law school. It was going to mean I had to spend the summer before law school with no break going in. So anyway, huge error. Didn't manage my credit hours well. Luckily, I got into a half semester course that existed at our school that was double the time, which made my, last semester even busier. But like I say, that's more common than you'd believe. Students get there to the end and something doesn't count. And it's a huge worry, big anxious moment when you find this out. So anyway, keep track of your credit hours, plan for that senior year. When am I going to take classes? What am I going to take? And make sure I'm going to be able to graduate when I want to, along with all my requirements met.
I will say that is probably the one biggest difference between high school and college is that it's the high school's responsibility to make sure you take the classes that you need in order to graduate with the appropriate classes needed for that diploma. It is your responsibility in college to make sure you have that because you have that. And Jason, you've said this quite a bit, autonomy. You have that in college to choose your classes. And if you choose wrong, it's on you. It's not like high school where they're making sure everything is done the way it needs to be. Granted, you have an advisor or a mentor that would be doing that if you communicate with them. But it's on you. And that's the difference between college and high school. I will say we should have just asked the question, what was your biggest mistake? Because I'm about to tell you my biggest mistake. It's not really what I've seen, but what I experienced. And I looked at it as, I know that there was going to be hard classes within my degree that I was going to have to take. And they didn't have really any prereqs or I guess you would say postreqs. So classes after them that I needed to take. So I can just push them off to the very end. And I did that with the mindset of they're hard and I just wanted to push them off. I didn't want to do them right now. It didn't click with me that they're hard and I'm going to have to do them at the very end. And what it did is it added a degree of stress that I just did not need in my senior year, because if I would have failed that class, I would have had to take that class over again and I would not have been able to graduate on time or when I thought I was going to graduate. So leaving those really different, and I remember what class it was for me. It was lit class. I think it was an American lit class because me and reading just don't work well together. And I pushed that off to my final semester. And the whole time I'm thinking, if I don't pass this class, I'm going to have to stay an additional semester doing this. And looking back, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I almost wish I'd have gone your route where I can just take gen ed classes and be done, which I guess lit is a gen ed class, but it was a harder one for me.
Sure. And another consequence of pushing those classes back to the end, especially your core concentration or major classes, prerequisites.
Yep.
Particularly in business, I think most, at least BBA programs, have a capstone class that's focused heavily on strategy and some comprehensive overview of everything you've learned. If you have not taken those prerequisites, some of the hard classes that you push off to the end, all of a sudden you'll find yourself there for another semester, for another summer course, that type of thing. And when you have plans for graduate school, when you have plans for scholarship money running out or state assistance running out, or however you've managed your life and finances and things like that, that is a big kick in the teeth to find out you're going to have to come up with funds for another semester. You're not going to be able to move. You're not qualified yet to go on to graduate school, which, given the admission cycle, could push you back an entire year in your life type scenario. I've seen so many people with plans to go on to graduate school, plans to do certain things. They just didn't manage their time well. And that gap year that they took, they didn't have a plan for that either. And they lost motivation and ended up doing something completely different, didn't go in that direction in their life. And their life might have worked out just fine. But also it could have been different. It could have been something they wanted to do more, right? I can't say what they regret and what they don't. But in my scenario, I would have always had regret if I had plans in that way and didn't follow them through.
Yeah, and I just went on our docs page and added scheduling to one of our topics to talk about, because I think it is such a big issue with students with prereqs and knowing how to schedule and understanding and the importance of scheduling out, not scheduling for one semester, but scheduling out for multiple semesters so you can go ahead and have this stuff planned. But I think that is a great place to end this episode. This was a fun episode. Next episode, as Jason took away my excitement, we are going to be talking about internships. And I know this is something that is near and dear to Jason's heart because he deals with internships at our college. So I can't wait to hear what he has to say from that side of it. But before we go, Jason, you got anything to say?
Just remind everybody, we're here for you. Get us those questions so we can talk about them.
Awesome. Well, until next time, y'all have a good one. Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.